Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 385 for the 6th of March 2016. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, which I think Sydney has moved a little closer to the sun recently, folks. This is the endless summer that won't end, hence the endless summer. Still hot, still humid, muggy nights. And those people in the northern hemisphere who promised to send me their snow and ice, well, I'm sure it's on the way. In fact, it probably melted before it got here. Coming up on this week's show, we're going to kick off with Heidi Robertson. Welcome return of Heidi Robertson, who's had a bit of a sabbatical from the Skeptic Zone. Welcome back, Heidi. She's going to be reporting on chicken pox. Chicken pox in the Raw Skeptic Report. Now, of course, you may have heard that in this country and probably other countries there have been chicken pox parties. Yes. Adults are putting children in danger of getting the horrible infectious disease of chicken pox. Incredible but true. And Heidi will tell you such things, which I know all too well, is that in later life people who have had chicken pox can look forward to the possibility of shingles, I being one of them. And our good friend Steve Roberts, who runs Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying, not so long ago had a nasty attack of shingles because he had chicken pox in early life. So to those parents who take their children to get infected with this horrible disease, think again. And you should listen to Heidi Robertson's report all about chicken pox as part of her continuing series on infectious diseases. Following that, it's the Good Thinking Society. Another report from the Good Thinking Society in the UK. They're going to investigate osteopathy. They ring up an osteopath to see if they will also, like the chiropractors the week before, treat colic. And then after that, it's a report on a noted anti-vaccination campaigner, Chris Savage from Queensland, who has recently left Bali. And it seems he was setting up operations there to treat autism. Treat autism. A bizarre story, as reported at the Australian Skeptics website. Then to round off the show, a little bit of lightheartedness. Skeptics in the pub here in Sydney. And we ask the big question, what do skeptics think of chemical-free food? Chemical-free food? Something a bit more lighthearted to round off the Skeptic Zone. Now, thank you to those people who wrote to me and contacted me about last week's Skeptic Zone and my report, my item entitled Holes in the Plot, about the way the mind works and how believers perceive the world. Thank you. It was so nice for you people to write to me and let me know that you enjoyed my report. And you found it very useful and insightful. That makes it all worthwhile. That's really great. Thank you so much. Now, right at the end of the show, when I do my wrap-up, I will give Sydney people some information about an upcoming Australian Skeptics dinner meeting. Always worth attending the Australian Skeptics dinner meetings here in Sydney. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, toast a bagel. Yeah, get some nice English cheddar cheese, melted on top, maybe a little bit of avocado on top of that. Yeah, sounds pretty good. Well, I'm doing that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
everyone. This week I'm continuing my series on vaccine-preventable diseases with varicella, commonly known as chicken pox. I was born in 1973. I remember getting chicken pox at around the age of 6. I recall being thoroughly miserable, Mum trying calamine lotion on my spots and putting me in cool baths, neither of which relieved the intense itching for too long. I still bear a few scars over 30 years later. I'm sure many listeners would have similar memories. So, what's the big deal with chickenpox? Is a vaccine for it really necessary? Let's look at some facts and why the anti-vaccination crowd are so very wrong once again. The following are excerpts from an article appearing in KidSpot in January of this year, written by Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Administrator Dr. Rachel Heap, Associate Professor Stephen Lambert, and Jenny Bate from Light for Riley. Quote, "The incubation period, the time it takes between catching it and symptoms starting, for chickenpox is 10 to 21 days, and it spreads to others through coughing, sneezing, or coming into contact with the blister fluid in the spots. Someone with chickenpox is contagious from around 48 hours before the first spots appear until every spot is crusted over. In other words, you can be contagious before you know you are sick. In general, an unvaccinated person with a standard case of chickenpox will get between 200 to 500 spots, which can appear in the mouth, nose, vagina and rectum as well as on the skin. And these spots often lead to permanent scars. Around 1% of cases of chickenpox will be serious and have complications like 1. Infected spots leading to nasty complications like cellulitis, sepsis, kidney failure, scarlet fever, rheumatic heart disease and death. 2. Pneumonia and respiratory failure. 3. Neurological injury including ataxia, losing control of muscles and coordination, meningitis, encephalitis and transverse myelitis, infection and inflammation of various parts of the central nervous system and spinal cord. 4. Thrombocytopenia, a low platelet count leading to bleeding and bruising. 5. Congenital varicella. If a pregnant woman gets chickenpox, 1 in 50 babies will be affected. This includes skin and limb deformities, eye problems and brain injury. 6. The development of shingles. This occurs later on in life as a result of the virus reactivating, but is the result of the same infection that causes chickenpox. Before the chickenpox vaccination program in Australia, there were about 240,000 cases each year, leading to 1,500 needing hospital and an average of 7 to 8 deaths each year. The highest rates of hospitalisation occurred in children under 5 years of age because of how widespread the disease was in that age group, but infection is often more severe and complicated in adolescents and adults." End quote. This from ScienceDaily.com. Quote, "In a national study of chickenpox admissions at 4 participating Australian children's hospitals, researchers found the number of children hospitalised with chickenpox or shingles had dropped by 68% since 2006. The results of the study, now published online in the Paediatric Infectious Disease Journal, show that there were no deaths identified in the participating hospitals in Australia during 2007 to 2010, following the widespread introduction of the varicella vaccine. The study also shows that of children needing hospitalisation for severe chickenpox, 80% had not been immunised." End quote. Back to the KidSpot article. Quote, "Before a vaccine was available, pretty much everyone would get chickenpox at some stage in their lives. It was well known that the disease is more often dangerous for adults to get, and so some parents would want their children to catch it while they were young in the hope that they would get a milder case than if they caught it as an adult. It was for this reason that some parents would organise to catch up with infected friends and family to deliberately expose their children. However, as we now have a safe and effective vaccine for chickenpox, and given the reduction in disease around Australia, there is absolutely no reason to deliberately expose children to this disease. The vaccine is a live attenuated vaccine, meaning that it contains the chickenpox virus that's been weakened to such an extent that whilst it still causes an immune response, it doesn't cause a typical chickenpox illness. In about 15% of chickenpox vaccines given, a very mild form of chickenpox can occur, which usually shows as a few minor spots just around the injection site. Vaccine-associated chickenpox cannot be spread by coughing and sneezing, but a very weak version of the virus can be found in fluid in the spots that form in rare cases. There is a theoretical risk that this very weak form of the chickenpox could be spread to another person if they were in close contact with the blister fluid. This can be completely prevented by covering any blisters with clothing or a dressing and following simple hygiene rules. The spread of vaccine-associated chickenpox is so rare that according to the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, out of around 55 million doses of vaccines given, there have only been about 5 cases of people getting infected from contact with a vaccinated person. This risk is so low that current recommendations from the CDC and in the Australian Immunisation Handbook are for household contacts of people with immunosuppression to be fully vaccinated to protect the vulnerable. Because the vaccine-associated virus is significantly weakened, although there is a small risk that it could lie dormant and become reactivated as shingles later in life, this risk is much reduced compared to the risk of shingles after natural disease. No vaccine is an absolute force field, and there will always be cases in which vaccinated people can get the disease. This can be because their immune system didn't respond to the vaccine or because the vaccine gave them only partial immunity. However, if vaccinated people get the disease, it's usually a less severe illness, fewer lesions, shorter illness, less contagious, and recovery is quicker. Chickenpox infection in someone who has been vaccinated is known as breakthrough disease. The chickenpox vaccine is particularly effective at preventing severe or complicated disease. One dose of the chickenpox vaccine leads to an 80 to 85% reduction in the incidence of catching the disease at all, and a 95 to 98% reduction in severe disease. 2 doses, given at least 4 weeks apart, increases the effectiveness of disease prevention to 98%, and is 100% effective at preventing severe disease. Currently, a single dose of the varicella vaccine is funded Australia-wide for children through the National Immunisation Program, which is given in combination with the MMR at 18 months. This is the MMRV vaccine. However, the Australian Immunisation Handbook actually recommends 2 doses of the vaccine to protect against breakthrough disease. If you want to take this up for yourself or your family, you would need to ask your healthcare provider for the second dose, and it would need to be paid for. Anyone who hasn't had the vaccine or the disease as a child needs 2 doses for protection. No medication or treatment carries zero risk, but risks associated with the vaccine are either much milder and shorter-lived than associated with the disease, or far rarer. The most common complications following varicella vaccination are pain or swelling around the injection site. Fever is possible and can occasionally lead to febrile convulsions, which are very scary for parents, but very rarely lead to any lasting issues and much more common with the disease than the vaccine. Other complications, including serious allergic reactions, occur in less than 0.01%, that's less than 1 in 10,000 people getting the vaccine. Once someone has had chickenpox, the virus remains dormant in the body and can flare up to cause shingles. I'll be covering shingles in another report. Meanwhile, the anti-vaccination crowd are dismissing or denying outright the complications of chickenpox, displaying insensitivity and outright nastiness to those who have suffered permanent damage or lost loved ones to the disease. In December 2015, a mum in Brisbane, Holly Singleton, made news when she was planning a chickenpox party and offering to infect other people's children with the disease. She cancelled the party after the media got hold of the story. In a Facebook post, she was quoted as saying, "Truth as I see it is too harsh for most to accept. Illness keeps population in control and is meant to eliminate the weak and build a stronger species. I'm not liked for that belief, but it is really how I believe we should be understanding our kind." End quote. Chris Coker, who lost his son Michael to chickenpox, appeared on a morning television show in 2010 in order to raise awareness of the little-known dangers of the disease. He was subsequently mocked by the anti-vaccination organisation, the AVSN, on Facebook, who insinuated the story was not true by stating, quote, "It's not April Fool's Day, it's spring," end quote. Wendy Lidle, anti-vaccination activist with no medical qualifications, appeared on the same morning television show on another occasion, openly laughing at a paediatrician who said that he has treated kids with chickenpox in intensive care. Lidle's own children contracted measles, chickenpox and rubella, and her daughter whooping cough when she was 4. Meryl Dorey, ex-president of the AVSN, has written, quote, "Chickenpox, a disease that has never been considered deadly. The vaccine was not introduced to prevent deaths, but rather to allow mums to continue working so the country would not lose out financially." End quote. Media outlets need to stop giving these cranks airtime, need to stop framing vaccination as a debate, and need to understand the harm that false balance has in compromising public health initiatives. Let's finish with a mum that does deserve airtime, that deserves our compassion and our admiration for sharing her story. Renee is a member of the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group and has shared her story in several forums online. She has kindly allowed me to share her son Jesse's story here, which appeared on the Before Vaccines blogspot. Jesse Lee was born on November the 12th, 1991. He was a happy, funny child who enjoyed making others laugh and would say and do funny things for that purpose. He had a sense of humour that was sometimes on the cheeky side. Jesse had just graduated from 3rd grade and was starting his 4th. He was healthy, active, charming. He had everything waiting for him. Jesse came home from school on Monday, August the 27th, 2001, with a bad headache. Almost as bad as a migraine, Renee remembers. He had no fever, but he felt horrible. He started vomiting heavily that night and continued through the next day, Tuesday. He rested as best he could, with his mum watching his fluid intake and keeping him as comfortable as possible. Worried, Renee slept in his room for the next few days, watching over him. On Wednesday, when things were no better, Jesse's parents took him to the doctor. The doctor prescribed antibiotics. Later that day, however, they noticed Jesse had spots over his chest and belly, signs of chickenpox, and still no fever. At this point, Jesse managed to eat a bit. Worried, Renee kept a constant eye on him and made sure he was drinking enough. Jesse was no better on Thursday, except that he was now dry retching instead of actually vomiting. He had no fever, but he was in bad shape. His parents took him to the doctor again, and this time he was sent immediately to the local hospital, the first of 3 hospitals he went through. Renee describes the situation in that hospital as hectic. The nurses were extremely busy and Jesse was getting very little attention. In the night between Thursday and Friday, breathing became harder for Jesse. He was struggling for air. The hospital gave him oxygen and x-rayed his chest. That's when they discovered that he had a bad case of pneumonia. He was covered in chickenpox lesions at this point. Renee says they went internally and caused pneumonia. The local hospital concluded that he needed treatment beyond what they could give him, and at 7:30 p.m. sent him to another hospital. That hospital too concluded that they could not treat Jesse and arranged for him to be sent to an even more specialised hospital in Newcastle. A specialist respiratory team came from the Newcastle hospital and put Jesse, now receiving oxygen constantly, into an induced coma for the trip back to Newcastle. Before they put him into the coma, his parents got a last chance to talk to him while he was still conscious. They said their goodbyes, not knowing whether or not he would ever wake up, not knowing whether they would ever talk to him again. Jesse asked his dad whether he was going to die. Paul, Jesse's dad, said, "No, mate, we will see you when you wake up." By Saturday, Jesse was in a critical condition. Renee says they were telling me he was very sick and they were just doing their best to help him fight it. All through Saturday it was touch and go. Jesse was hooked to multiple tubes, receiving multiple medicines. His condition seemed to improve slightly, giving his parents hope. It was short-lived, says Renee. Quote, "Then he deteriorated, and in the end his heart could not take it anymore and failed. His organs just started to shut down. He had chicken pox everywhere. On his arms and legs, he had them everywhere. He was covered in them." End quote. Jesse left the world just before midnight on Saturday, September the 1st, 2001. He was not yet 10 years old. The chickenpox vaccine had come out 6 months prior to Jesse's death, and Mum Renee was not aware of its existence. Jesse and his sister had been vaccinated as per the schedule for everything else. Jesse will be remembered by all of us at the Northern Rivers vaccination supporters as the happy, smiling, cheeky kid in the photos Renee has shared of him. This has been Heidi Robertson of the Northern Rivers vaccination supporters. We can be found on Facebook, at our website nrvs.info, and on Twitter at nrvax, that's VAX, supporters. Thank you.
Did you see that UFO sighting that made the news? What did that latest study about alternative treatments really say? Is this photo making the rounds real or a hoax? Doubtful News is a unique website featuring news about pseudoscience, the paranormal, anomalies, and questionable claims framed with a skeptical view. Come visit doubtfulnews.com every day for news about cryptozoology, conspiracies, shams, scams, and more. Follow us on Twitter at Doubtful News. Critical thinking is essential in assessing today's news. Doubtful News helps you decide, can you really believe this stuff?
Good Thinking Society at goodthinkingsociety.org. Hear osteopaths claim to treat babies for colic.
Hello, I'm wondering if you can help me. You treat babies, don't you?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Would you be able to treat colic?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes.
Many osteopaths claim to treat colic with cranial osteopathy, a therapy with no evidence of effectiveness. We decided to find out what an osteopath would tell a distressed parent seeking advice. While this conversation has been edited for length, we have taken care to retain the meaning and intent of the original discussion.
And what sort of age do you take the babies from?
Oh, any we've done preterm babies that have really just come out of hospital. Anything, anyone.
Right, okay, so 8 weeks isn't too young then?
Oh, no, not at all, no. Was it a quick birth?
No, I had a long labour and then I ended up having a caesarean.
Right, well, that's what I was going to say. If baby's born very quickly or caesarean, or if they've had fontus or forceps, they can go into kind of a shock because everything's happened so quickly. 1 minute they're in, next minute they're out. So they don't always get rid of those stresses and strains from what is normally a traumatic birth anyway, but a quick birth. With the quick ones, you tend to get a lot around the diaphragm. So if it doesn't release, then you get a lot of colic and reflux.
What is cranial osteopathy? We asked Edzard Ernst, Professor of Complementary Medicine.
Cranial osteopathy is an alternative treatment developed by an osteopath based on the assumption that the spinal fluid moves and influences our health. So the osteopath would apply gentle pressure to the skull under the assumption that he can move the bones of the skull. He would treat conditions particularly for children and particularly colic, infant colic. And the evidence that this works at all is nil. The plausibility of the treatment is equally nil, and I would say this is one of the many bogus treatments we have in alternative medicine.
Yeah, they don't need a diagnosis. What they'll do is they treat what they feel. You know, we do babies, children with autism, and sometimes we'll say, I haven't had a diagnosis yet because he's not such and such an age. It doesn't matter to us. They treat what they feel.
So can they help with autism as well then?
Well, it depends what's going on in the body, because some children who are autistic, or even teenagers, they can be like a coiled spring, and they can calm that down. Obviously, they treat what they can feel is out of alignment or wrong in the body. We do get quite a few that do keep coming for maintenance every 6 weeks, every 2 months, something like that.
Yeah.
We just find that it keeps them calm. Some are dyspraxic. So if you're into autism, then you'll know that there's a wide variation of symptoms.
So an older child who had attention problems or autism or behavioural problems would maybe benefit. Can't say until she gets her hands on them, because they'll feel what they can feel, tightness or, as I say, out of alignment. But it can help. It can help in a lot of people. Have you been on our website? Yeah, well, I've just been on the website, and I could see that there's a section on babies and children. So. Yeah, the thing is, advertising restrictions don't let any therapist say that they treat anything like colic or what is on everyone's website is the only thing we can put on. So if you look at the testimonials, it gives you a bit more idea there. Oh, I don't know if I've seen the testimonials. I can see the babies and children, and it seems to be just describing exactly what he's like, you know. Yes, but without saying colic. Yes, can't say it. Can't even say colicky pains. Well, thanks very much for that. All right. It's been really helpful. If you need any more information, just give me a ring. Great. Thank you. Thanks for that then. Bye. Bye.
Well, I think it's very surprising to hear that cranial osteopaths treat children, very young children, even preterm children, that they pretend and claim to be able to treat effectively things like infant colic, because there's simply no evidence for that, and therefore the claims are bogus, and to make bogus claims is unethical. I think this is quite outrageous.
Was this osteopath simply a bad apple? We found 4 other osteopathy clinics willing to treat babies for colic within 20 miles of the first clinic.
Hello, osteopath.
Hello, I'm wondering if you can help me. Do you treat babies?
We do, yes.
I was wondering if osteopathy might be helpful for him.
Yes, it does. I mean, I've treated quite a lot of babies over the years, but I do know of a lady osteopath who specialises in this kind of treatment.
The osteopath here is a grumpy baby and colic specialist he does. He's got his masters in osteopathy. But yeah, he definitely does babies.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of babies with colic, and it is something that we can sort out.
So do you see them from quite a young age then?
Yeah, from about 2 days onwards.
Claims to treat babies for colic appear to be rife in the osteopathy industry, despite no evidence that such treatment is anything but a waste of time and money. We have shared our findings with the General Osteopathic Council as part of formal complaints against the osteopaths we spoke to. Investigators Lara Thompson and Michael Marshall, with Edzard Ernst, editor Mark Pentler. Music Ben Sound, www.bensound.com. Special thanks, Matt White. To find out more about the Good Thinking Society, visit goodthinkingsociety.org or at Twitter Good Thinking SOC.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
As reported at www.skeptics.com.au on the 17th of February 2016 by Tim Mendham. Anti-vaxxer Chris Savage offering, quote, medical, end quote, treatments for autism in Bali. Chris Savage, noted anti-vaccination campaigner, has set up operations in Bali, offering intravenous magnesium injections to treat autism. Savage, who prides himself on his 20-plus years' experience as a police officer in Queensland, was previously warned by the Queensland Department of Health to desist his medical activities. He has no qualifications and a limited understanding of medical realities. His constant references to vaccinations, quote, sucking the life force, end quote, out of people, including himself, are indicative of his wayward and potentially dangerous approach. On his YouTube page, he has called for potential patients, and especially parents, to travel to Bali for his treatments. Indonesian authorities have been notified of his presence in the country. Dr. Rachel Heap, an intensive care unit specialist in northern New South Wales, says that, quote, intravenous magnesium is classified as one of the high-risk medications that require extra precautions and policy directives for patient safety because of the potential risks associated with its use. It also comes with a formulation that needs diluting, and therefore without the skills and training required, it can be easy to make an error and give the wrong dose. In our hospital, patients who need intravenous magnesium are often looked after in the critical care setting because it is recognised that its administration carries risk. Then there are the systemic effects. Magnesium can cause flushing and tachycardia, hypertension, loss of reflexes, respiratory depression, and in high enough doses could cause bradyarrhythmias, including complete heart block, cardiovascular collapse, and death. It is particularly dangerous if you don't know what somebody's kidney function is like, or if they are on a number of other drugs that could potentiate its effects. Savage suggests an intravenous regime, which makes me wonder what his training and experience or qualifications to put an intravenous cannula in are. If not diluted correctly, magnesium can be a local irritant on the veins. Also, above and beyond the systemic side effects, there is the fact that he is using it without qualifications to insert a line, and I suspect without knowing the correct dilution to protect local tissues. End quote. Savage is possibly best known to skeptics for his rambling diatribe at the No Jab, No Pay, No Way protest in Brisbane last June, in which he ran through a list of conspiracies, including government infringement of rights, and what he and others claims was vaccination role in sudden infant death syndrome and accusations of, quote, shaken baby, end quote, syndrome. He regularly cites his police experience as some sort of imprimatur for his rants. His list of paranoias and conspiracies on his Facebook site is extensive, including the, quote, satanic vaccination industry, end quote, and vaccinations as, quote, bioweapons that were designed by a bioweapons lab by a bioweapons scientist from Nazi Germany. The whole vaccine industry is satanic to the core. Babies are killed in the womb and their fetal tissue is sold to vaccine manufacturers. And then blood money is paid to bribe the politicians who use coercion to force parents to allow their children to be attacked with these vaccines. End quote. He is also rabidly anti-Jewish, claiming that they practice mind control, poisoned water to spread plague, and that, quote, Jews are behind all major terror events, end quote. Naturally, he is a Holocaust denier. He is a proponent of the banned and highly dangerous black salve treatment of cancer. Quote, the hate-filled demons of the media mafia are of course opposed to untrained individuals burning off their flesh out of spite for evidence-based treatment, end quote. And at the No Jab protest, he accused police of covering up what he claims are negative and sometimes fatal outcomes of vaccination, while at the same time praising police as hard-working individuals. His consistency is poor, his medical qualifications non-existent, and his supposed effective treatments have been described as dangerous. We will report on the outcomes of any further action taken by the Indonesian authorities. More about Chris Savage is available at the Reasonable Hank blog, and that was published at www.skeptics.com.au by Tim Mendham on the 17th of February. Since that story was published, Chris Savage has left Bali, and this story appeared at 9news.com.au on the 2nd of March. Ex-Australian cop flees Bali amid claims he offered to cure autism but had no medical training. A former Queensland police officer has left Bali amid allegations he was offering to cure children of autism and other diseases despite having no medical training. Christopher William Savage returned to Amamor in the Sunshine Coast hinterland after Indonesian medical authorities began investigating his activities last week, News Corp Australia reports. The anti-vax campaigner and former One Nation candidate is accused of providing intravenous infusions of magnesium and dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, for children with autism, people with blocked or calcified arteries and aorta, cancer and other ailments at the Bali clinic or in people's hotel rooms. Indonesian authorities have threatened that if Mr. Savage returns, he will be investigated for allegedly breaching health laws and could face jail and be banned from re-entering the country. Mr. Savage has denied conducting the procedures, saying that he, quote, oversaw, end quote, the treatments by people with a specialist who he would not identify. The ex-police officer said he was conducting a business feasibility study in Bali and he was forced to abandon due to a campaign of lies orchestrated by the Australian Skeptics group. Quote, no one got hurt, certainly no one died. All were exceedingly happy, but of course the way the world is, they don't want to know how to heal people, end quote, Mr. Savage said. Quote, I wasn't doing medical procedures. All the medical procedures were being done by people that were qualified, and I was giving advice to these medically qualified people, end quote, he said. Mr. Savage reportedly arrived in Bali in August last year and began offering infusions of magnesium chloride and DMSO. In a series of videos that have since been removed from YouTube, he says that up to 16 IV bags of the substance, which cost $150 per bag, could be needed to cure disease. Mr. Savage claims the treatment can only be offered in Bali because pharmaceutical companies in the West, quote, including Australia, has been hijacked by criminal corporations and their minions, end quote. Medical practitioners have said that there is no known situation in which both DMSO and magnesium chloride would be administered to a patient simultaneously or intravenously. And that story comes from 9news.com.au, published on the 2nd of March.
Hey, Heidi.
Oh, hi, Joe.
Hi, Heidi.
Oh, hi, Maynard.
Hi, Maynard.
Oh, hi, Joe.
Nice day in this park, yeah?
Yes, great weather.
Oh, look, a unicorn.
A unicorn? There are no such things as unicorns, silly.
Yes, there are.
No, there isn't.
Hey, ladies, what are you arguing about?
Joe thinks unicorns are real.
They so are.
Let's look this up in the Skeptics Dictionary.
The what?
How can we do that in this park? There are no computers here.
You ladies probably don't know about the Skeptics Dictionary app, available now for iPhone, iPad and iPod Touch in the App Store.
Yeah, we do. We've been listening to the Skeptic Zone for years, you know.
Yes, okay. The app lets you access all the great Skeptics Dictionary articles when you're on the go. Here, let me look up unicorns.
Oh, cool. Heidi, prepare to be proven wrong.
It says here the unicorn is a creature from fables.
Aha!
Actually, I see now that someone just dumped their ice cream cone on that horse's head.
Thanks, Skeptic Dictionary iPhone app.
That's just some guy in his undies.
And now for a bit of silly fun at the end of the Skeptic Zone. Join us at Sydney's Skeptics in the Pub, where I speak to Trish Han and Peter Bowditch about a little magazine I found, a little flyer promoting chemical-free products. At Skeptics in the Pub here in Sydney, and we're just perusing a magazine I collected on the way here. Trish is having a look at it now. Let's have a look at the cover of this magazine, Trish. It says, Healthy Choices for a Healthy Life, March 2016. Options for gluten, dairy, sugar, pain, chemical-free choices. Trish.
Yeah, I haven't eaten in 32 years. It's absolutely hilarious, the things in here. They particularly hate parabens from the look of things, because I guess paraben is a scary word.
Yeah, but I'm quaking in my boots when I hear about it.
So many syllables.
So many syllables. Ratbag, Peter. Oh, Peter, thank you for your contribution on last week's show. And I saw you were glancing at this chemical-free magazine.
Yes, I was noticing the front. I was a bit confused when it said that it was gluten, dairy, sugar, pain and chemical-free. And I wondered about the pain. But I figured, what it is, that in fact, of course, is the French word for bread. So they've reproduced the gluten-free by saying, for even French people, French bread is no good for you. But I'm impressed with chemical-free stuff inside. Look, you know, you can get chemical-free salt.
I always use chemical-free salt. You're probably the same yourself.
Now, it's interesting that it says here that parabens are bad for you. Parabens is in fact a Portuguese word that means nothing right whatsoever. And I found it on some packet of something that I bought. And it turns out it was had different labels for different languages. And one of them was labelled parabens. And I thought, it's a foreign language, they're hiding something from me. I went and looked it up, and it means something like, sugar. But I mean, I'm fascinated by this chemical-free food.
The magazine has a whole list of products and ranges. But yes, this whole term is chemical-free because you see it again and again in the New Age industry, don't you? You must have spotted this in your illustrious investigations.
I'm one of these people that generally avoids all this kind of... The beauty industry is particularly bad for it, as is the health industry. I cannot stand it. But one thing I find quite funny is that people that I know who are into all this CrossFit stuff, they go in for all this as well. And it's like the paleo diet and the gluten-free and all this kind of thing. And personally, I think it's quite damaging because gluten-free especially seems to have really taken off. And on the one hand, it's great because it means that people who've actually got things like celiac can go to all these restaurants now they couldn't go to before. But also, if these restaurants are just pandering to the whole gluten-free fad, how do we know they're actually really going to the effort of avoiding putting gluten in things?
Hey, that's a really good point. You could buy your gluten-free XYZ pizza or whatever, and it could be chock full of gluten.
Well, even if it's not got gluten in it, if it's been prepared in a gluten environment, then obviously there are some people who are so sensitive to gluten, like genuinely sensitive to gluten, that they could end up hospitalised just from poor preparation. So this kind of stuff is actually, it's funny, but it's also really damaging, and that's one thing that worries me.
Things you don't think about. Yeah, I actually suffer from a medically diagnosed food ingredient intolerance. I read labels on the back of food to tell me whether it's got this stuff in it. And if it's there, I don't eat the stuff, or I don't eat too much of it. I'm actually impressed with the chemical-free diet, though, because with the ultimate slimming diet. This would be better than Michelle's whatever it is 12-week thing that I saw on TV last night. Some woman lost 34 kilograms in 12 weeks. No, she didn't. If she did, she needs to talk to either a doctor or a psychiatrist, or she had a leg cut off. But I think that chemical-free diet would be perfect for weight loss. I reckon that after about 3 weeks, you'd weigh a lot less. After about 4 weeks, well, and then of course after you're cremated, you weigh even a lot less.
Chemical-free foods, I think they're quite expensive, actually. It's a huge process to take all the chemicals out of food, especially water too. I think that's chemical-free water.
Water's deadly. You've only got to breathe a little bit of it and you die. I actually burnt myself with a gaseous form of water. I reached across the kettle to get to something, and I got this great big burn on my arm. It was really bad, and that was from water, a chemical.
Well, on that related note, in the UK and in other sort of, cold climates, the solid form of water can fill an A&E department. Patients just absolutely floored by it, literally floored by the solid form of water.
And this stuff is legal.
Legal.
What the hell?
My whole town was cut off from the rest of the world by 2 days last year because we had 20 centimetres of frozen water sitting all over the yard. It was dreadful.
I think we've, here at Skeptics in the Pub, we've stumbled across a major conspiracy.
We don't have fluoride.
We don't, but they don't have fluoride. Well, I'm pleased to hear that.
Üdv! Kraskó Gábor vagyok, a Skeptikus Társaság Egyesület és a Skeptikus Szervezetek Európai Tanácsának elnöke. Mint a Skeptic Zone podcast hallgatója, bizonyára te is fontosnak tartod az áltudományokkal kapcsolatos felvilágosítást, a kritikai gondolkodást és annak népszerűsítését. Ha szeretnél részt venni ilyen tevékenységben, vedd fel velünk a kapcsolatot a www.skeptikustarsaság.hu vagy az info@skeptikus.hu címen. Továbbá ajánlom figyelmetbe Facebook oldalunkat is, amit a facebook.com/Skeptikus-társaság címen találsz, valamint várunk szeretettel rendezvényeinken. Hi, this is Gábor Raskó, President of the Hungarian Skeptic Society and Chairman of the European Council of Skeptical Organizations. As a listener of the Skeptic Zone, you probably agree that educating others about pseudoscience and critical thinking is an important task. If you are eager to take part in either of these activities, we would be happy to hear from you. Don't hesitate to contact us at www.skeptikus.hu or info@skeptikus.hu. We also recommend you visiting our Facebook page, Skeptikus Társaság, or simply come and join us at one of our events.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and thank you, Heidi Robertson, very much for that really insightful and moving report about the horrors of chicken pox. Yes, chicken pox isn't just some benign, silly little childhood disease at all. It's a horror, and it does take lives every year. And we look forward to the next report from Heidi. Don't forget to visit the website of our reporter Maynard at maynard.com.au for his podcast Bunga Bunga he does with Tim Ferguson from the Doug Anthony All-Stars and lots of other Maynard craziness. Oh yes, now to mention the dinner meeting here in Sydney on the 9th of April, Sydney Skeptics dinner meeting, how the creationism movement is evolving. Now, you can get tickets to this meeting by visiting www.skeptics.com.au and clicking the shop link. Is creationism dead in Australia? Far from it. In fact, some say that the teaching of creationism in science classes has become more prevalent. Now, this will be a talk by Dr. Nick Matsky, a postdoctoral scientist at the Australian National University working in evolutionary biology. He was involved in the famous US Kitzmiller versus Dover trial in 2005. And Nick will show how the anti-evolution movement is evolving to spread its message. That's at the Ryde Eastwood Leagues Club, Rydell Road, West Ryde. And that's at 6:30. For more information, just visit www.skeptics.com.au and we hope to see you there. Australian Skeptics dinner meetings, always worth attending. Also worth attending are Australian Skeptics National Conventions, and this year it will be held in November in Melbourne. More about that in the coming months, I'm sure. And thank you to those people who subscribe to the Skeptic Zone, less than $1 a week. You can do that at skepticzone.tv via PayPal, and wow, does that really help keep the show in production and hopefully in your ears, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you're doing. If you're listening to me in your headphones now, mowing the lawn, walking the dog, you're probably at the gym, or maybe you're commuting on the bus or the train or the ferry or the submarine or the light aircraft. What else could you be doing? You're probably doing housework, listening to me right now, mopping the floor, vacuuming. Did I say walking the dog? Walking the cat. Walking the budgie. Having a swim, special waterproof. Whatever you're doing, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone, and I hope we manage to keep you company and keep you informed. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.